Hey guys, we're back. Um, and what we're going to do today is a little more talking and less direct coding. There will be some refactoring, but really it's about planning the refactoring, which is a lot of software engineering is a lot of thinking. So the application as it stands is fairly functional. The basic thing works. Enough to proof of concept ish works. It still needs to be cleaned up. A lot of things are implemented in an incredibly naive way. They're implemented just to get it to work. There's not enough tests for things, documentation. Um, some of the design principles that I like to use of the solid principles are kind of violated a little bit, which is fine. Um, just getting things working. But I really want to clean it up because as the application grows, the when lines are blurry between what everything does in like the single responsibility principle, I find the S to be the single responsibility principle to be the thing that drives design the most for me and makes it easiest to understand and debug. When things are doing one thing and one thing only, and they have one responsibility, then it makes side effects harder to exist. It makes carry on effects more difficult to occur. It prevents a whole class of bugs and issues. And not only that, it makes it easier to reason about what the code does because each thing only does one thing, so they can be tested and developed in isolation. So I violated it in a few places, reviewing the code. Wanted to just talk about it, make sure that I have a game plan. And then later this afternoon, in the next episode, we'll probably go to actually implement the changes. First, we're going to think about it, talk about it, plan, and then we can actually go ahead and implement. So we'll go ahead and take a look. We have our application. It's cool, but we're not really going to focus on that. We're actually just purely going to focus over here in uh, the editor. We're going to talk about a couple of things that I've noticed. So I have three files open that work together. The left is the model for a net. The middle here is the service, and the right is the handler for that service. Now, the idea is that the user, when they make a request, they're going to go from the handler, takes the user input and deals with the request stuff and collects all the information, uh, logging, all that sort of fun stuff. It's going to use the services which handle all the business logic, and the services are going to have the models, and the models are purely about the data integrity, uh, looking up the data, that sort of thing. I'm okay with a model having finders in it to locate itself. I think it makes sense to put it there. That just as well could go in the service. Because there's might be some business logic there, but uh, at the very least, I'm okay with the model having that. Um, and then the service will return normal errors, work with models, all that sort of fun stuff, enforce business logic and business rules, and then give it back to the handler on the right to deal with the outcome of that service. So if there was an error, show it to the user. If there wasn't an error, uh, render the right thing, do a redirection, add stuff to the user session, all that sort of stuff. So what I noticed was a couple things. One, when you create a new session, net session this is, we use the service to actually do a get to locate the session, and then we call add session directly on the model here. Now, we're basically skipping the service. So that means that in this case, the model has some responsibility to modify the database. Uh, I don't think that really should be there. I think it makes sense probably to move the session creation to the um, service, since it also would make sense to, if I need to trigger service and events or anything like that, I feel like the service itself should be able to do that. Um, and even like when I replay things, right? Uh, in this example, let's see, do I have it? Yeah, get replayed. All get replay does is get in basically the model does all the replaying and enforcing of all the business rules. So this is the model is maybe doing a little bit too much and the service is doing too little. So right now the service is mostly creating events, um, which is fine, but it shouldn't be really be doing that. And even this event is an event service that actually does the model creation and ensures that we can just look at this for a moment. It does the actual encoding. It does a few things like that. So it makes sense. The service does that, um, not the model. So what I think I want to do is we're just going to add a little bit of documentation, make sure we clarify what each of these categories are, and this way we can then apply that. And I think the game plan should be to move stuff like add session into its corresponding service, right? That makes more sense to me. And then even this replay and replaying of events, I think should actually go to the service, and this way all the business logic is enforced there. Because once that's done, most of this model it's eviscerated in a sense, right? Like it doesn't have to do anything. The other thing that I noticed is validations. So we do when a check-in occurs down here, we receive the information from the user. We actually perform the validations that are defined in the view, because the view is also involved here. The validations are defined in the view, and then we render things. I think that the validations should actually be occurring, should be defined on the model, because the model has the responsibility of data integrity. Uh, they should be executed by the service. The service should actually run those validations, and then the actual currying or moving around of saying, okay, there was an error on the name. Okay, we should put it in the thing that the in the view what the view model needs in order to render that. Um, and this way, it's all in one place. And then this would look kind of the same, but the difference would be is that instead of doing the validations directly, it would just basically have a type switch here saying, "Hey, were there any errors at all creating this?" Because in this case, it's valid, but there's still more error checking because what if we can't save the check-in or can't create the event for a check-in? It creates additional problems. In which case, which you can see here, where it's like, oh, uh, we can't do a check-in. In this case, I just panicked because obviously it would have to copy this here, and that's a really good indicator, uh, almost a code smell when you have to do multiple responses like this, where you have to re-render or basically multiple ways that you can get to an error state. That's an indicator that maybe the design or architecture needs to be altered a little bit. So let's focus right now on cleaning up, first defining what the roles of each one of these things are. We'll actually write the documentation for that. And then we can lay out some might be have time to lay out some pseudocode. It depends how long it takes us. So since the model was on the left, we're going to go ahead and say models here. So we got our models, cool. In the middle, we said we have our service. So we're gonna um, define that here. And lastly, we have handlers. That's not what I want. So as we said, the handler has the um, handlers responsibility of handling requests and responses. They're the entry point of the application by users. Uh, thanks ChatGPT or whatever. Um, let's see. Their responsibilities are to um, extract user input from the request, extract tokens. Um, let's see. No, enforce. What are they enforcing? Um, authentication requirements. Uh, ensure um, request security, and they also are display errors to the user, and they also um, return HTML or JSON responses. Cool. And let's do this. Do I have a formatter? No. Which is fine. I'll just do it manually for now. I'll have to set that up. No trailing spaces. Yep, I definitely have to set that up. Now, a service, um, responsibility of handling business logic application, the glue between the, oh, that's it. Got a bunch of stuff. So this is similar to an MVC. Um, models and uh, nah, I don't like any of this. They provide, yeah, that's true. Okay. They are the logic of the application. They provide a layer of abstraction between the handlers and the models or other components. So the reason I say or other components here um, is heading should be surrounded by what is this complaining about? Actual zero. Heading should be surrounded by blank lines. Whatever. Oh, it's because that it got a little upset. It wants this. Okay, fine. Um, we're gonna do this. Their full responsibilities are to um, enforce business rules, uh, perform the data validation. So this will actually do the validation and return errors to the handler. And they also can return data to the handler. And what do they also do? They can trigger events, server sent, or otherwise. So basically, if there's a server sent event, it's going to come straight out of the service. Um, it's a shared responsibility, and that part of that is the handler has to have the ability to provide that event to the user and send it to the user, but the actual like, hey, something happened, uh, triggered by the service. And this way, anywhere in the system that a event occurs or that some change happens, it can trigger that event, and all those subscribers will be able to be notified. Um, this also can send emails or otherwise interact with external services. So this is important. So a handler should not be making a request to a third party. It never should. Handlers have to be snappy because the user is expecting a response. Um, this means that they should um, run background tasks. So if HamDB, if we're going to be checking if a user is licensed, we need to be mindful of the fact that an error needs to be returned very, very quickly to the person that initiated the service so that we can return response to the user as quickly as possible and then trigger the execution of validation of that user right away. Um, this way um, keeps things nice and fast. So multiple analysts should be surrounded wants this. Have validations on my editors. Yay. And now a model, um, models have the responsibility of representing the data. Nope. Responsibility of representing how data is structured, defining um, so that's cool. Uh, their full responsibilities are to um, define the data structures, um, and their relationships. This should be an S. We also have to define validation rules, uh, define encoding and decoding rules. Cool. And provide finder methods to look up data. Look up or query for data. So now we have clearly defined rules for each one of the categories here. We will do the same thing for views and events and all of that sort of jazz, just to make sure that we have a clear mental model of what the responsibility of each one of these things are. Now, we probably should document how do you define a basic service, um, things like that. Um, so let's do that real quick. Um, so let's do the service event. This is an example. Um, so, hmm, okay. Finding, let's just do this. Yeah, that doesn't seem like it's spelled right. We'll just do this. Okay. So the basic thing of a service, what? I do not like that. Okay, that's better. Um, is there's an exported uh, let's see, some service has a struct, um, and then there's an exported name of the same service, and then there can be functions on some service, and we're gonna say, I don't know, action and error. So that's a basic service definition. Services should they should have the following structure. Notice that is defined. So the service is defined as a um, as an exported variable of an unexported. Uh, whoa. So I like doing this at least for this state because I only want there to be one of these things. You shouldn't be able to pass them around. At least right now. Um, Maybe we'll have an event for some interface or something like that for this. Um, but yeah, so I'm gonna add a little bit more documentation about the whys of this, which I don't know if you need to necessarily follow me along as I come up with all of the pros here. So what I'm gonna do off camera, off live, just for a little bit, is I'm gonna basically build these all out so that we can clearly define what they are. I'll also do the same thing for the events, the models, all that sort of fun stuff. Um, and this way we can review it together once it's fully written. Um, so that just takes some time of coming up, just defining what it is. Then uh, later this afternoon, we'll go ahead and we will get, I'll review each one of these things together um, and review each one of these things. Yeah. Uh, and make sure we understand the responsibility of each one. And then we can go ahead and start making some of those corrections uh, and refactoring, which is where the more of the fun stuff is. We're going to have to move some tests around. We might add a few tests. Um, we're going to see if that it's an experiment, right? We're going to see if that cleans up the code, makes it easier to understand. We might introduce a couple extra services just to make it clearer. Like maybe we want to have it where the user and sorry, the net, the session, that sort of thing actually gets stored in the context, and we just pull it all out instead. Uh, Still have to think about those things, and it's really just seeing how it looks after we enforce the single responsibility principle according to our definitions. So, all of the code for that will that I'm writing now will end up in the branch episode 5, and I would continue, but we gotta, yeah, like I said, we have a few things I need to take care of between that and just a lot of writing, um, without a lot of hands-on keyboard code. So we'll get that done, and we'll be back for episode 6, where we'll actually apply some of those refactorings, those concepts, see how they apply in the real world. And as always, check out the source, github.com, Ryan Fairman slash NetControl, pronounced NetControl, spelled NetCTL. And with that, we'll keep this one short and sweet, and we'll get to, like I said, more meat and potatoes coming soon. But this is a very important part of all engineering projects. And thanks for coming along for the at least the explanation of the documentation step and what I've been thinking about most in the morning. So appreciate it. Appreciate you. Stay cool.